Welcome to Simply Home and Harvest. My name is Jen, and tonight we're having breakfast for dinner. So if that's something you'd like to see, stay tuned. All right, now the decision is what to make for our breakfast for dinner, and I think it's going to be sausage gravy with eggs, some homemade biscuits, and I've got some apples I picked up at Aldi today, so I think I'll cook some apples. And then there's something that we used to have a lot, we haven't had in a long time, and I've had a taste for it, and that's a grits souffle, I think is probably what a lot of people would say, a grits casserole. Anyway, some good old southern grits with eggs and cheese on top. It's delicious, and I think we're gonna add that to tonight's menu. So that's the thought. And it's a good night for it. It's chilly outside, it's fall, and I just think breakfast for dinner would be perfect. But I've got to find the recipe first, and I've showed you all my binder before, and it has not improved, unfortunately. It's still kind of messy, but I know our recipe is in here somewhere. Well, obviously, look at that. Sourdough biscuits all the way in the back. Okay, so I think I will make our sourdough, buttery sourdough sandwich biscuits. And now I've got to find that grits casserole recipe. Oh, right on top. Must be a sign. I found this recipe in a Better Homes and Gardens magazine, I think years ago. Have it scribbled down on a piece of paper, and so that's what I have hung on to all these years. But it just calls for grits, butter, cheese, eggs, milk, and some grated Parmesan, and we have all that. So let's get cooking. All right, first thing we're gonna do is we're gonna get 2 cups of water boiling over here on our stove. And we're gonna measure out 1/2 cup grits. Once that water comes to a boil, then we're gonna add our grits, and we're just gonna let those cook for about 10 minutes, and then we'll add everything else to it, and I'll show you how to assemble it. Very simple recipe, just takes a few minutes to put it together, but it does take a while to cook, so I wanna go ahead and get that done first. Well, it did not take long at all for our water to start boiling, so I'm going to add 1/2 cup of grits. We're just gonna get that stirred into our water, and I'm gonna also add a little bit of salt to that, and we don't want that to boil over, so I'm going to turn it down. Now, I am well known for having things boil over on the stove, but I heard about this trick where if you put a wooden spoon over top of your pot, it will prevent it from boiling over. So we're going to find out together if that is a fact. Our grits has cooked, and I'm going to take back what I said about 10 minutes. Cook your grits for about 5 to 7 minutes. Mine cooked really quick, and I don't remember. My recipe I wrote down says cook for 10 to 15. So definitely don't cook for 10 to 15, or they will be very well done. So to my grits, I'm just going to add 1/4 cup of sharp cheddar cheese that I went ahead and shredded myself. I like to buy the blocks of cheese and just go ahead and shred those when I need the cheese. I don't know, something about the taste I think is it just tastes better to me, and you don't have to worry about all those preservatives on that pre-shredded cheese. And then I'm just gonna mix in the cheese to the grits, and then I'm going to add 4 tablespoons of butter, and I cut those in pieces so that they would melt a little bit quicker. That mixed together. All right, I'm gonna let that sit in the pot for just a second and melt. And while it's melting, I'm going to look for my dish to make, what sounds better? It sounds fancy to say grits souffle. So I think if you're gonna carry this to a brunch, a fancy brunch, you should call it grits souffle, because that sounds fancy. But if you're just gonna make it for breakfast for dinner, you can just call it grits casserole. I think that sounds better. That sounds southern, you know? Okay. Gonna find a dish here. So to our grits mixture, we're gonna add 2 eggs, 1/3 cup milk, and I've already whisked this together. I'm gonna whisk it again though. All right, so we've got 2 whisked eggs and a 1/3 cup of milk that we've already incorporated together here. And I'm just going to pour that into our pot. Everything else there. Stir that together. And our grits had cooled a little bit so that we're not making scrambled eggs. Okay, that's a much better angle. So we're just gonna add now our grits to our prepared dish. All right, now to the top, we are going to sprinkle on 1/3 cup of, I'm using grated Parmesan. If you wanted to, you could use a shredded Parmesan, I think, but I like the grated Parmesan. It's what we've always used. So I'm just gonna use that. Spread it out a little bit with my clean hands. All right. And then, this is optional, but I do like the addition of the cayenne pepper on top. Just a teeny tiny bit. Just to give it a little bit of color and just a little bit of heat, but not much. That looks good. And I hear that our oven is preheated, so we're gonna put that in our preheated 350-degree oven. The recipe will be linked in the description box below. All right, grits are in the oven. One thing I am gonna do is I'm getting a sink full of soapy water going to wash our dishes as we go. That's something that my granny taught me. She's a very wise woman, that you should always have a sink full of hot water so that when you're cooking, you can wash as you go, and then you don't spend hours and hours in the kitchen cleaning up after you finish dinner and you've worked so hard. You can go and rest because you've got it all done. I wish I could tell you that I always remember to do that, but I don't. So tonight, the reason I remembered really is because I need some of these dishes again and some of these utensils again for other recipes that we're going to fix. So that's probably really the reason I'm doing this, but it is a good idea to do that. You'll be happy you did. All right, we're gonna go ahead and get started on our biscuits. First thing I'm gonna do is line this baking sheet with a piece of parchment paper. All right, the first thing we're gonna do is we're gonna measure out 1 cup of unbleached all-purpose flour. I'm actually using the King Arthur buttery sour cream sandwich biscuits recipe. That's from the King Arthur flour. And I will, of course, link that in the description box below. To this, we're gonna add 2 teaspoons of baking powder, 3/4 of a teaspoon of salt. Just gonna mix that together a little bit. I'm gonna use my pastry blender to now cut in 1/2 cup of butter. And I went ahead and cut this into squares, and this would be 8 tablespoons, would be the equivalent of 8 tablespoons. So this is a very buttery biscuit. And what we want to do first is we want to just kind of get this mixed in to our flour and baking powder until it's crumbly. All right, now we have our sourdough starter here. I fed it a little bit this morning, so you can see it's nice and bubbly and it's grown a lot. I'm going to get 1 cup of our starter into our biscuit dough, and you can see how crumbly our flour and butter mixture is there. There are many, many biscuit recipes, and I just happen to be using a sourdough recipe tonight because I had sourdough starter that I wanted to use. But I'm sure if you stick around long enough, you will see me make biscuits another time without using sourdough starter. I do it both ways. Okay, so I'm just gonna gently stir our starter in. Just wanna mix this into our dough. The recipe says until it's cohesive. I would say until a dough forms. So you can see a dough is starting to form. gonna use our pork sausage that we got from a local farmer. Now, we don't get all of our meat from local butchers and farmers, but this past summer we have started, which we've been getting our sausage locally, or some of it at least. But this year we started to get ground beef from a local farmer as well. And I'd like to do more of that in the future. I just think it's wonderful when you can support your local farmers. And if we can't grow it ourselves, it's nice to give support to the people that can. But it's not always economical to do that, so I'm thankful when we can. All right, I'm going to go ahead and get this sausage cooked up, just getting it broken up. Now, this is a very lean sausage, so I'm not sure how much grease this is going to give us. We may have to add a little bit to make our gravy, but we'll see where we get. That cooked for a few minutes. Our casserole is getting ready to come out of the oven. So I've been making my gravy like this for some time now, and it's so easy. Instead of draining off the grease from my sausage, I just leave it in the pan and sprinkle the flour just directly over top of the sausage with the grease. And I just eyeball it. During this step, I add enough flour until it starts to thicken, and you'll see here I have to go back and add a little more flour to it. And then after that, once I have it as thick as I want it, and that takes probably a couple of minutes, then I will start to add in the milk. Again, this is something I kind of eyeball too. I just add it until it looks like it's the consistency that I want it and stays in the pan. I don't want to add too much milk because I don't want it to boil over, but I'll add the milk and then I will just heat that to boiling. And I also add a little bit of salt and pepper, as you can see right there. But I heat that to boiling and I let it simmer, but I will stand there and stir it just about the whole time. And you would be surprised at how easy this step really is, and it eliminates having to drain the grease off. Tim came home and started cooking eggs because he says that I can do a lot of things well, but cooking eggs is not one of them.
It's truth. Here on the homestead, I am the egg cooker.
He is. He definitely
I'm actually
is.
the breakfast cooker.
He is. We'll have to get some Saturday morning footage. We don't always have this on Saturday morning though. And the reason I like to do sausage and gravy for dinner is because it takes longer. And that way I have a little bit longer to cook dinner than I do for breakfast. Same for the grits casserole and for homemade biscuits. Dinner was wonderful. Did y'all like it?
Great.
Success.
Not to talk.
I told him not to talk. All right, you can talk now. Did you like dinner?
It was great. Woo!
All right, so I've got lots of dishes and cleaning up to do, so I'm gonna leave you here. Until next time, remember to live simply, use what you have, and enjoy the moments you've been given. Bye for now.